So, oh, thank you.
It might be important.
It's very, also very old, actually. So first of all, thank you to be here instead of already going to holiday. That's very nice. And sorry for making all this outside while it's raining, but we can't predict the weather so well. And then before anything, I would like to introduce the presentation itself in a way. So I've been wondering what and how I would present my work and what could I say, what would I say and stuff. And in general, overall, in the last many years, that has been the most difficult thing of my work, to kind of understand how to present it and describe it and talk about it in some ways. And what I'm trying to do, what I will try to do today, will be to give a why. Like the big question, why do I do what I do, in a way? And to do that, my presentation, or whatever is my discourse written here, is divided mostly in 3 steps that source from the alchemic transitions that are namely nigredo, albedo, and rubedo. That generally means blackness, whiteness, redness. We'll go with that later. So yeah. And so before, not before starting, now starting, let's say, I would like to start with a thank to the first people that gave me some sort of reasons to do what I do, that are my grandparents, that are not alive anymore, but they were very nice. Their name was Aldo Rossi and Maria Godani, and I would say thanks to them, many things sprouted. So yeah. The first stage of alchemic transition, as we said there, is nigredo. Nigredo, that stands for death, stands for decay, it stands for decomposition, putrefaction. It stands for everything that brings an alive body into darkness, into out, away from the light somehow. And in a more psychological and philosophical perspective, nigredo is intended as an approach to one's shadow. So in the moment in which we try to self-reflect, the first step is to look at our own shadows. And that's why I wanted to thank my grandparents as a first thing. Because my granddad was an Italian man from a village that eventually was a soldier during the Second World War, and that, bit naive, went to war fighting for fascism, but not really because he believed in it, because he was compelled to do it. And he found himself in Greece, and not even 2 months was passed that the armistice make him an enemy of the German state. So right away he was deported in Germany, and he passed the 2 years that I spent in Erasmus, he passed them as a prisoner, as a slave, for a working camp in Leipzig and Dresden, and eventually survived the bombing of Dresden. And yeah, luckily I was able to meet him then. My grandma instead was a cook. She was a cook in the same village. They met just after the war, and they got married almost right away. And sadly, when she was about 60 something, she had some sort of disease, and she got blind. So she couldn't really cook anymore. And that sort of like really put her off or like her own identity and like whatever she could believe in and whatever she could be as a person. So I actually met her like that she was already blind. Still, she would cook for me, my brother, my cousins, like the little minor things that she could still manage to do even without seeing. And yeah, and that was like something that's like I grew up with, let's say, so that I could find important for my development. Also, I forgot. My grandma, before getting blind, she was illiterate because, like, when she was asked to wear the fastest uniform, she refused, so she wasn't allowed in school anymore. So, yeah, that's like just a context. Now I want to jump a little bit in time. I want to go straight to important year for my life, for the world in a way, and or like I would say mostly Europe, but for the world in Europe's perspective. That is 2015. I don't know if you remember, 2015 was like Milan World Expo. World Expo that was about nurturing the planet and it was about energy for life and it was researching about technologies for innovation and specifically for food. In that year, I barely went to see it because I received a free ticket. I just went to the entrance and then I refused to enter because like of the stories that I was told that were like mostly about what we know as hyper-capitalism, taking identities and making them into commodities in the attempt of like what we call now greenwashing somehow. And there was like a very first global attempt for it. And that diverted my attention towards art into a more like ecological perspective somehow. At the time, I was studying painting, very traditional painting in Italy with traditional teachers. And after summer vacation, I got sick. And we couldn't really figure out what it was until we figured out that I had a heart disease. A heart disease sourced by the fact that, yeah, the heart itself was genetically a bit different. And in that situation, I was like forced to stay at the hospital for a month and to get a surgery. This was actually, yeah, late 2014, but eventually got the second one in 2015. Why I'm saying this is not because like that is necessarily just important. Of course, it's important for me that I confronted death somehow at a very young age. I was like 20. Not a death as many people are facing nowadays, a death that was genetical. I was, at the time, wrong somehow. Luckily, we live in a time in which we can fix that. So they did. Sadly for me, my granddad was in the same hospital. So a week after my surgery, he died. And yeah, that was a real facing death time and experience, 2015. At the end of that year, I took an Erasmus and I came to the Netherlands. Now, the second stage of alchemic transformation is albedo, whiteness, purification, separation, distillation, fermentation at times, and in general, the selection of what's so-called prima materia. That means the first or the most important prime matter, material, medium. As I said, like in 2015, I came in Holland and coming from all these experiences, I started to question like my practice in a way, following whatever happened or whatever was happening in the world somehow. Most importantly, what happened for me in Holland, that I was requested a certain amount of things that I was never requested in Italy. That was to cook for people. Because, you know, I fell into the stereotype. What? I fell into the stereotype in which I was requested many, many times, like in a very professional way, to cook for people. And I never had like any food expertise, any food like education. I was just Italian, and I just like had, you know, like my family, my friends cooking. That was it in a way. But like in Italy, we say di necessità virtù, like from necessity virtue. So I felt like it was maybe like a good idea to combine like whatever was my interest, like in my studies, painting at the time, or like paper making specifically in that moment, with food. So I started to combine the two and started to understand like and sort of like blend into these two different mediums and like trying, basically to select, as we were saying, to select what was something that I should do or what was something that I shouldn't do somehow as an artist, following all this like ecological like pretext that I mentioned earlier. It was going well, I have to say. It was so well that in 2018, the World Health Organization even like stated a new definition for what we can call like human people, or like in general like physical, like multicellular animals that are like more complex, but not even than insects, but in general like mammals and stuff. That is the holobiont. The idea of holobiont, what is? It's the fact that we are genetically, as humans, composed of 10% of human DNA and 90% of whatever else DNA of things that are bacteria, yeasts, little things, stuff we don't really know how to name, that basically compose us as a conglomerate of relations, right? And in that moment, when that kind of definition came out, and it was like from like the World Health Organization, right? So it was very important, and I was working with fermentation as many people started to. I was questioning like basically what are choices then? What are choices of our own? Do we choose? Do we literally like choose what we do, what we want, and so on? Or like the 90% of DNA that we're composed of also like has something to say in the matter? I can't answer that though. But funnily enough, we all know 2019, 2020, we all were enforced to have to think about stuff somehow. Mostly to think about stuff. A lot of time to think, a lot of time to sit, a lot of time to do nothing or like a little bit, right? So as many people, I started to ferment a lot of stuff. I started to ferment, I started to know all these like practices of fermentation, from sourdough to lactofermentation, to kefir, to kombuchas and so on. Sort of like finally actually finding a way to combine what, in my opinion, could be like an art practice, as in an ethical practice, into some sort of like medium that in that moment was about nurturing some other cultures, bacteria, yeasts, that eventually will become part of me or will become part of anyone that would interact with it. As a final stage, the hardest one is rubedo. Rubedo, that namely means redness, that as you can see is very hard to get, is ideally in alchemical terms and history the accomplishment of what is the philosopher's stone, you know, like the object or the reach, like the reaching of immortality or enlightenment. But ideal is not only about that, it's about discovering the inherent qualities of things. The gold that is not the shiny, precious little stone, but the gold that is the shiny, precious entity and identity of whatever you're working with, whether it's yourself, whether it's the thing. And that's where I am now, somehow. Here, in 25, 10 years later, after heart surgery and Global Expo, we're going to have a new one this year. And what is the main goal of Rubedo? If we want to go beyond the fictional, we all know, like a philosopher's stone, what it could be, but how do we put it in practice in a real life in which we really have to do and relate to something, right? And we can separate it into material, into the material and to the personal and spiritual way, in my opinion. And as for the material, I might be able to share something with you. Oh. So, you can come here as a group, in line, around, as you want, and pick a spoon, and I will just like serve you. If you want to know what it is, it's a philosopher's stone. So yeah. What is it? A philosopher's stone in this case is apricot, coated with goat cheese kefir. The goat milk, I went to a goat farm in Belgium, like 45 minutes from here, more or less. It's raw milk, so if somebody doesn't consume raw milk, you can consume this. It's fermented, so ideally the lactose and the casein are also like a bit broken down, so if you're intolerant, shouldn't be so bad. There's really tiny bit of it anyway. And the coat outside is beeswax to help the fermentation and prevent any spoiling. Anyway, beeswax is also antiseptic. So yeah.
We eat it with a spoon.
So you eat it with a spoon, and we can also bring the other stuff. Then there is also like some other little ferments that we're gonna put over there. Some goat's labne, some little kohlrabi fermented, some bread. So while we have the Q&A, we can, like, without swarming over there, like, you can just get a little bite of something and yeah, taste it. Or we can wait for later. Yeah. Meantime, like, you're welcome to come here. We'll give you some of it if you want.
You don't eat the outside?
No, you don't eat the wax. Hmm? The goat cheese is just like coating outside. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Luca. I think while you're cutting, or maybe someone can cut.
Well,
we
someone
can do
can take over as well, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. We can do the Q&A. This is wonderful. Would you mind elaborating a little bit more on the third stage? Because this what we're looking at is in fact also a culmination of everything that you've said. It all comes down to what's happening here. So do you feel that you've reached a point where you're sort of, maybe mastering some of these techniques? And
I mean, like, I mean, like I didn't reach any point per se.
Wax, right?
You cannot eat the wax, no.
No, you cannot eat.
No. I mean, you can, but it's not gonna make anything bad. But you shouldn't. Yeah.
Don't need to wax.
They say you can eat it.
Yeah. No, but to answer the question, I think like the fact is like it's a cycle in my way, right?
Yeah.
Like it's more like about a cycle, like so it's not about reaching a.
Trying to have a conversation here. Let's try to
It's
have.
not about reaching a point,
Yeah.
but it's about like death and rebirth, right?
Okay.
So I've reached a point.
Okay.
I don't think I've reached the redness that I was trying to talk about somehow.
Okay. But it's something that.
But I think I'm close to a point, and I think after that I need to face probably something that is going to decay again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny because in Japanese philosophy,
I mean, if you don't trust it, put it aside.
in Japanese, oh, what is it? This one is rot. This one is rot.
It's rot, right? Yeah, maybe not. It's not.
I wouldn't do that if I were you. In Japanese philosophy, the final stage is emptiness.
Yeah, I mean, like ideally, the very commonly the idea of like also in Taoism as well, like but the idea of enlightenment
Yeah.
is about this sort of emptiness in a way.
Yeah.
Still, I think we live in a time in which like this sort of like asceticism sort of like doesn't make sense that much anymore somehow. I think it makes more sense in like maybe to, confront also with certain ways and certain cultures, certain like experiences that we are rooted within our own cultures and like find the simplicity in them though. Yes,
Okay.
that and the quality in it. That's definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Anyone wants to pose a question? Maybe have a comment on what you're eating right now. Is it nice? Delicious? It's nice? Yeah? You want to hold the mic?
Yeah, yeah. It's great. It's strange in a way, but in an interesting way. Yeah. We're thinking the same.
It's heavy, man.
Hmm?
It's quite heavy.
Heavy.
Yeah.
It's sour.
Yeah. It's sour.
But there's something else, and I can really.
It's sour, bitter,
It
fizzy.
tastes like butter as well.
That's
butter.
that's probably the kefir.
That's kefir. Okay.
Yeah.
It tastes like yogurt as well. Like.
Yeah.
How is the bee wax made?
What do I do? Do I eat it or?
What do you mean?
How they make
Maybe it's
this?
good for
I dipped
bacteria.
the apricots in the beeswax, in the melted.
So when I came, so maybe for this,
Bees make
it's
by
nice.
themselves.
No.
Bees make wax. Yes.
Ah, yeah.
Like it's what the beehive is made of.
Ah, yeah. So they
Like the-
they make it. So you buy this wax.
You buy the wax. It's both like a good thing to do or a bad thing to do somehow. Like I mean, it depends how you do it, right? It depends how you source anything. Because in a way, you take away the bee's house in the moment in which you take the beeswax. But also, if you make it in a way for which they can like replenish it and so on, then you preserve the families and stuff.
You want some?
I will have one actually.
Taste it.
Hey Luca, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about the social aspect of your practice and like how do you find this relation between the act of sharing and like eating together and
I mean, it's always like a tough balance, to be honest. Like, especially with offering food, I think like it has a lot to do. I mean, a bit starts from, of course, like the will to create a community in general, to create like some sort of like sharing moments, and to be able to like practically share whatever is the work, in a way. And that's one aspect. At the same time, I think like food is very specific because like as soon as there is some free food, especially in a corner, then like you see a swarm of people like sort of like jumping on it, right? So like in that moment, I think like I like it a lot. I like to play with it as well sometimes. Now I didn't play so much, but if it was more like performative moments, sometimes I really make it in a way for which I question also this like how do you say like I wouldn't say inputs, but yeah, these inputs, natural inputs, like these impulses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would have maybe like scattered the food in different places and make it playful for the sociality to move around. So I think sociality in this way is a movement.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a third aspect, my perspective as the artist, let's say, I think it's a nice exercise for acceptance, like in general, because you really see everyone dealing with this gratuity in a totally different way all the time. And that's like beautiful to sort of like look at it, respect it, and accept it, and try to find ways for which that is shared amongst, yeah, the people later on. Yeah.
I have a second question. Yesterday we also talked a bit about your ways of designing like this visual structure, and like how is your approach about like not maybe like putting some fragments and then letting other peoples to imagine what those structures can be, and how do you create your visual language, and what is your goals or motivation?
I mean, in some ways, I always struggled a lot with having, like, creating my own imagery. I don't know, like something like that. I didn't have so like I really source a lot by absorbing what I see. Also, like by looking at things that I see that they function, they work aesthetically, practically, whatever, and sort of like try to repeat it, declinate it to my own way, of course. That's one way. Specifically about like these wooden structures and stuff, like so many years ago, like as many people, I bumped into this Enzo Mari book about self-making stuff, and it's sort of like, and I work frequently with my collective that are architects. So like we ended up making a lot of projects like this, and now I'm trying to more and more like transform it in my own way. But it's not easy to get. To be honest, it's not easy to get out of the style in somehow. And then like I don't know, like as in for like symbols and little objects and stuff, like I'm trying to contextualize it between like, for example, what I'm finding out about like alchemy and some like medieval knowledge, but also like something that, as I was saying, like we will relate to. Like, I don't know, for me, when I made the first one of these, I was like, okay, this is a Kinder Surprise, you know? And even though we didn't we don't recognize it as like immediately, here we do somehow. So I'm trying to combine the two things. Yeah.
Here's the chlamydia.
Hmm?
What's this, the chlamydia?
Well, I mean, like the back of the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone question?
Yeah. I don't know if it's a question, but I am thinking about the moral aspect in your work, because in a way you just talk about that. If you can talk something about this, you think it's a better work with doing this practice?
I mean, so I mean, of course, the first question is always about like this idea of coherency, right? Like when we talk about ecological practices, I don't think I try to be coherent necessarily. I just try to like look at the quality of like whatever wherever I source my materials, what kind of materials I source, and so on. So like, and I know that there is like definitely there's going to be some mistakes and some unethical outsourcing there that sometimes I'm aware of and sometimes I'm not aware of, and that's kind of like the thing. As if it is a better world, I don't know. I think I find it relevant what I do somehow. Like, I don't think everybody should do this way. That would make no sense. But I find relevant that some of this knowledge that implies this time-consuming practices, this sort of like attentiveness to also like very specific things that who cares, still are important somehow. And to finish, more like not for today, but for a very, like in my perspective, also for a very pessimistic future.
And what do you think about the privilege of do this type of food in this context? Because, like you see, you buy good yogurt. How you feel that, or how you think around that?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's what I'm trying to show is the opposite. That I didn't go to buy fancy good yogurt. I made it myself. Like, I have the cultures and I attend to it. I just go to buy the milk that is as expensive as supermarkets. I just take the time to go to the place. Of course, it is a privilege, in a way, to know this more than doing it, because time-wise, I don't think it's the problem, or economically as well. I think it's more a privilege of knowledge, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm just curious to know, maybe it's another bit abstract question. What are you thinking when you're trying to make something like a food? Like, what is going on in your mind in the sense that what are you trying to achieve? I think it's not the taste, because you mentioned it in the past. Is that kind of relationship you try to create that we eat together, or it's like philosophy stone that you think there's specific kind of quality in the transition of the material? I don't know. Like, can you clarify a bit more on this?
Well, I mean, like maybe I can focus mostly on the fermentation part first, because it's different than if I would do like a dinner performance, for example. But with the fermentation, I think it's like try to find the best way to ferment a thing for which it becomes still edible, first of all. So like it's about balance. It's not about what I think necessarily. I mean, of course, it depends. Like I wanted to use this beeswax because it was like an interesting experiment. I was like, okay, what happens if I do this like wrapping in not plastic but animal product in like with all this fermentation? What happens? So it's an experimental phase. Then it's like trying to find a way to highlight certain qualities of the ingredient itself. So in this case, I know by experience that if you ferment alone apricots, they get way too sour, way too fizzy. They probably would have exploded. I don't know, like. So helping it with kefir, for example, was a way to give it more like a lactic, cheesy undertone that I sort of by experience knew could have been needed. I don't know, like. Then overall, like what I try to do is like try to stay with it and try to find like a way for which is still edible and then like flavorful and like, of course, not in the conventional sense, but then it doesn't mean that I will accept it anyway. Like if something ferments badly, I will try to find a way for which it's okay to combine it. That's why like I proposed also like other stuff to be combined with this and other things, for example. It's always about the combination. Then for the dinners is too long. If I have to think about like, it's a bit more complicated, yeah. I don't know if I answered
No, yeah. I think it's a bit, bit of everything, no? Because you mentioned about the flavor, the undertone by adding the cheese, but you also think, okay, it's experiments that you want to bring because by putting the beeswax and seal it. But I was also thinking like if it's experiments, in which context you're thinking about the experiments, because I think technical wise, I imagine probably it's a very ancient technique, so maybe it's not that sense, but are you looking how we eat it? What are our reaction? Like how? I'm just thinking about, there's so many directions and yeah, but
Well,
there's no.
like I mean, like for this kind of fermentation, usually you have like a bunch of possibilities, right? So either you do it like in a vacuum bag, that defies a bit the purpose of what I do. So it's like one-use plastic bag, basically. So this was an alternative that I found that was, as you say, like a bit more ancient practice, and it was an alternative that, to be honest, like it worked even better than when I did fermented apricots in a vacuum bag, for example. It's way more laborious. It takes way more time. It's not perfect because I still have to keep the stove on for like, I don't know, if we think about balances of energy. But definitely what I try to think a lot is try to find practices that are like as immediate as possible and also without needing some fancy tools. Because at the end of it, to make this, I had a pot. That's it, my hands and a pot. So you don't need some like, so it's about also like try to share some accessible methods that's like.
What do you want as like us as like a viewer, like, and consumers of like the work to get from like what you're offering, or like an audience, like what do you want from the audience to receive?
I mean, like, first of all, I think like maybe to see something or like approach something as food that we are like currently approaching more and more as less of an organic thing. Like in my perspective, food is one of the least organic thing that we deal with, even though is the base organic of like our existence somehow, like. So like one attempt is to try to divert into that kind of discourse, and the way in which I try to do that is by maybe like is by sorry an applause to the dragonfly. Yay. It's like to stimulate some sort of curiosity about this, right? So like, yeah, be able to reimagine like other ways to approach it, like also like not to think that these things you can have them only in a Michelin star restaurant, for example, because that's absolutely not the case, kind of. Thanks.